It's part 2 on the F250 build. So basically, I think the last video we got pretty much all the disassembly done. That was, like I mentioned in the last video, kind of some scope creep along the way. Found some stuff that just didn't look that great, and kind of took the mindset of, while you're in there, let's just get this done so that we don't have to take the front end apart again anytime soon. So let's go over to the truck and we'll see where we're at and see what's been keeping Low Tech Garage busy for the last week. So here's kind of an update, and I may have done a couple things since the last video, but nothing serious, as I wanted to share it with everyone. So not much to show here, just where the knuckles mount. I basically used a wire wheel. There was tons of mud and clay all caked on this, and so I just got that all cleaned off, so it's back to the bare casting. Inside the axle is kind of gross, I'm not gonna lie. I did sort of wipe out the real nasty stuff, but a little bit of a challenge for me as far as how far to take this without taking the axle out and having it cleaned. So probably do a little more cleaning in there, but that's about as far as we're going to go for now. We'll just get the seal surfaces nice and clean before that goes in with the axle. May see a little dripping up here, so I think I mentioned have a power steering leak. You can kind of see all the loveliness up here. I just started spraying this down with some cleaner. You may notice that the diff cover is off. You know, with how these seals were on the end, I figured it's best interest to pop the cover off, drain the fluid out, just make sure there wasn't any surprises in there. Thankfully, you might be able to see everything looks fine. Fluid was basically clean, nothing too scary came out, which is kind of a surprise, honestly. So I'm gonna just clean the front cover up, I'll reseal it, and put some fresh fluid in when we put this all back together. So let's go on the other side. Oh, you may also notice that, you know, the drag link and pitman arm, all that stuff is gone. All the tie rods, everything's pulled out because I decided just to put new on everything. Here's the other mounting pickup for the knuckle, also wire wheeled and cleaned. Again, this is all pretty clean. I'll probably just put a little lubricant just for when the seal goes on. Thankfully on this side, leak free. So really all we have is this kind of like pan hard bar left, and that's it. Everything else is being replaced, so all new everything. So yeah, it's been a journey, but I think this will make for a much better driving truck, and it definitely was long overdue. So really what we're going to work on this afternoon is pressing in the ball joints. And so I've also done some more cleaning. Let's show you here. Basically the knuckles, same deal. Oh, let's get this camera to cooperate. Here we go. So these, same deal, were all caked in mud and clay, grease. So I put them in the parts washer, scrubbed them all down. One thing I also noticed is the vacuum ports, which are right here for the auto lockers, were completely clogged. So guessing that was one of the many issues as to why I probably didn't have proper good four-wheel drive. So yeah, this is all clean and ready for some new ball joints to go in, which I've got over here. So this is a lower, we got the upper here, and we got an array of dies and stuff to do the pressing in. So yeah, with that, I think I'm gonna set the camera up and let's see if we can get this thing pressed in. Because at that point, that's actually some of the hardest stuff done. So with that, I'll be right back. So we got the press set up. Not the prettiest, but it seems like it's going to do the trick. So let's show you what we got here. Let's adjust this down again. Here we go. So an assortment of dies holding this thing on. Bring it around this way so you guys can see. And we got the splines down here. I put a little oil on just to help with them going in. And now I got to crank it down till the snap ring seat comes out on this side. So here we go. I recall this being the challenging one. Definitely the biggest. This, and you know, like most things on this truck, a cheater bar is usually required. So in typical me fashion, got a little carried away, but here's the update. Hang on. So this was the contraption I ended up using, and the ball joint is pressed in. Jack handle was used because it is a snug fit. But we're going to undo this now and make sure that the recess for the snap ring is visible. And if it is, our job, with the lower at least, is done here. So here we go. I would say that is more than good. Oops. There. So yeah, I would definitely say that's more than good. So we're going to get on, press the upper end, and then we're done with the ball joint press. Honestly, that's the most tricky part of this whole job. So pressing out the old ones, pressing in the new ones, and popping all the other tie rod ends and everything, that's the most effort, at least so far. So, you know, we have to rebuild the axles. I'm sure that'll come with some of its own treats and joys. I'm probably going to take those over to Josh's to do because he's got a bench vise right now. But yeah, let me get this other ball joint done, and yeah, we'll check back after that. So, status update. We have rebuilt knuckles. So here they are. You can kind of see the residue from the WD-40 in here. Probably blast this with parts cleaner before I put them back on, really just so, you know, road debris and all that doesn't build up on them. But new lower, things rock solid. New upper, rock solid. Same here. So great improvement. I'm just left with doing the snap rings. The only reason I haven't put those on, my snap ring pliers aren't strong enough to open the big ones for this. But next up, so we're gonna get these mounted up back on the front end and torqued down, and we're one step closer to having the truck back on the road. So I'll get the camera set up here in a few minutes to get the knuckles back on, and yeah, we'll start the reassembly process. So great success. So one of the tools I definitely recommend investing in if you're going to be working on these kind of vehicles that are old and leaky and you're going to have to be kind of refurbishing the original parts is a parts washer. So this is what I've got. It's just a Harbor Freight special. I think I paid maybe 60 or 70 bucks for this thing. But you know, I've gotten here components of the steering linkage, and then all this is the hardware for the hubs, and you know, assortment of wire brushes and stuff that cost peanuts, and I can use this solvent and scrub all the grease and grime off and basically clean these things up to a like new condition, which, you know, makes things a lot easier to go back together, not get jammed, cross-threaded, etc. So just something to keep in mind. You know, I'll drop a link in the description below to you know, this or equivalent, because if you're doing this work, it really is an invaluable asset and it really doesn't cost much. But yeah, like I said, I'm cleaning up some suspension components here, and then we'll do a little bit more reassembly of some of the subsystems. So I'll kind of give an update here in a few minutes. So one of the things I noticed when taking the truck apart, which quite likely explains why my four-wheel drive wasn't working as expected, is this. So down here, that's a car for another video. Seems like every time I film there's someone backing up or mowing yards, but you know, this is what happens when you do stuff on your driveway. But here's the hub. Right in this groove, there's supposed to be an O-ring. And you can kind of see it here. It's kind of beat up, but there is this yellow O-ring. And it looks to me like either someone forgot to put it on or something. And then they also packed between the axle seal and this full of grease. And this plastic or kind of composite shim was missing on one of them. So what does that mean? Well, the 4x4 with auto locking hubs is vacuum operated, so it requires the O-ring in order to create a seal that the vacuum can work on. So if you don't have an O-ring, you're not going to have much luck. Also, by packing that whole area full of grease, it blocked the vacuum port. So basically, yeah, wasn't going to work. So with that, what we have here, if we can spin this around, is this. So these are my new hub assemblies with the ABS sensors. And then I got these guys, correct Spicer O-rings that will seat in here. We will use a little knockoff Vaseline to lubricate this area and the seal. And then I cleaned up in the parts washer, which you guys saw, the studs and hardware that will go in the back of these. So this will get the kind of sub-assembly together. And, you know, then once the axles are back in, that'll just slot right back in. We do up the 4 nuts and we're ready for brakes. So I'm gonna work on this now because I have a few minutes, and then I think, yeah, I got a couple more things to do this afternoon and we'll get back on it. So here we are. Hubs are assembled, studs in, O-rings on, and lubricated. Also got one part of the steering arm drag link setup complete. This is all new other than the coupler. And then on this side down here we have the other drag link, again all new. And then I took the front cover off the diff. I was a little concerned there wouldn't be fluid in it. It was fine, so I painted that. And then I cleaned the dust shields for the brakes because why not? So, you know, scope creep again, but I'm gonna put these steering arms on just loosely, and then, you know, once they're in place, they're all ready to be torqued up, hopefully, assuming everything links up okay. And basically, I'm gonna get on with trying to drive these U-joints out, and if I have time, put the front cover back on the diff. So making some good progress, lots of reassembly coming on, and honestly pretty excited to see how this thing drives. I now know I will be putting some new leafs on this at some point, as well as some new shocks, because everything in the front looks tired, but for purposes of time, that's not happening in this mini project. But yeah, let me get this stuff on the truck and I'll show you what I got done. So we're on to axle assembly. So I got the axles out. Did not film it, but Josh and I battled to get the old universal joints out. They were pretty much fused in there. Luckily I had a ball joint press, like a small one for popping ball joints, and we put a ton of pressure on the U-joint cap and then gave it a really swift hit with like a 3-pound hammer, and that would free them up after getting the little spring clips out. But yeah, it was a couple hours of wrestling to get the old ones out. But save you the pain of watching us struggle with those, and this is what we're working with. So, axle stub, axle shaft, ran these through the parts washer as well. We have our new Spicer U-joint. I already popped the caps off here just to speed things up, and then we also have the seal kit that we'll be installing on these as well. So I'm going to go find a GoPro and see if we can set up a time lapse and see if we can figure out how to put this together. I'm hoping it's a little easier than taking it apart. So, update after me destroying the GoPro. This is where we're at. One of these days it'll point there. But, U-joint's in. Spring clips are kind of tucked down in here. Let's see if we can, they're kind of tricky to see, but you can see that lip of it right there. So, honestly, compared to removing the old ones, not too bad. So I'm probably going to put the others on the other axle, and then we'll mess around with the seals. And then yeah, we've got rebuilt axles, which is pretty exciting. This wasn't something I was planning on doing. I'll definitely feel good that it's all taken care of. So we have success. Yeah, it took less than 15 minutes to put both these U-joints in with the spring clips and everything. A little bit of persuasion to get the last caps just driven in a little bit. Probably just because of the corrosion that was still loitering on a couple of these. But there you have it, U-joint, U-joint. And I will say these feel a lot smoother. I didn't really realize that the old ones, but it makes sense. So now we have these axle seals we have to drive on. Basically everything I've read, this seal is pretty critical to creating the vacuum in the hub for the locking hubs in the four-wheel drive system, so you can't mess it up. And again, now I have the new ones of this. I realize that mine were pretty crappy condition. Probably explains why someone tried just packing it full of grease. So that being said, there is apparently some special tool you're supposed to use to drive these on. It's about like $100 or something. I do not have that, but I saw that a few people have been able to do this successfully without it. So I'm going to give it a try carefully and see if I can get these on next. They seem to be the kind of most challenging item to get on the axle. So if I get these on tonight, I think we'll be in good shape. I can get the other dust seals. That's what these guys are. They just go on the other end of the axle and kind of seal off the axle tube. And these were completely trashed or missing on mine. Probably why inside the axle looked as gross as it did. So if I can get those done, we're in real good shape. I basically just have to torque up everything on the front end, slide the axles in, and then we're on the home stretch as far as reassembly. So I'm going to get started on these axles, and I'll provide an update to let you guys know if I'm successful driving these things on without the tool. Josh and I had some success yesterday with our DIY seal driver. Here it is. It really wants you guys to learn more about that car in the background. We will definitely get onto it, but here. So, Josh named it Seal Driver 6. Seems a good name. The only thing to keep in mind, this is like an 1.25 inch tubing with a cap, which is perfect for hammering. And we just got one of these thread-on feet. We did have to grind it down somewhere between 1/8 and 1/4 inch, so just so it'd seat inside the seal. We used a belt sander. It was pretty effective. Still probably took 20 minutes or something, but it fit perfectly inside the seal, and honestly with a 3-pound hammer it probably took like 2 or 3 hits and the seal was on. So with that, let's show you what the finished product is and what we'll be installing today. So here they are. Brand new axle seals pressed on nicely. brand new Spicer U-joints. And then the axle, here we go, dust seals here. It makes me realize how bad the ones I had were. And then we got the new wheel hubs, full assemblies with ABS sensors and everything. So yeah, big day, I think. I think we can get all these in, hubs on. Oh, and finally, one last piece of the puzzle showed up yesterday too. Auto lockers. So I got OEM Motorcrafts, found a good deal on them. Took a little while to get here, but you know, I'm so far into this. Let's just put new on, and that way we know that it should be good. So with that, let's get these things on the truck. So I applied a thin layer of high temperature bearing grease to the knuckle. Just a thin layer though, just for the seal to ride on and then all the other seals to go in. I think I mentioned this before, but the previous person that worked on this, at least on one side, packed this whole space full of grease. And I think it did more, caused more problems than good. So this should help us slide the axle and seal in without issue, as well as the wheel bearing. And then I did get some grease just on a couple of the mating surfaces of the axle, so I'll show you that real quick too. Again, just to kind of help it all go back together nicely. So what I did here is, here we go, just a little bit here where it rides on the bearing and a little bit on the splines too. If it'll focus, there we go. And you know, just to give it a little something to slide back together, like I said. And then the grease I just showed you, that'll help with this seal seating in nicely too. So I'm gonna get this big axle in, and then we'll get started on the wheel hubs. So there you have it. Went in pretty easily. The longer axle is a little more challenging just because it has to go, you know, 2/3 of the way across the axle housing to seat the splines in. But I think, you know, once the wheel bearing assembly on the front end's in, you'll kind of see, like, it's pointing up right now, but as this shores up, here you can kind of see it sagging, but as we put the wheel bearing on, that'll kind of shore this up, and I think we'll be right where we need to be, and it'll seat back in properly. So yeah, next step really here is you know, I'm gonna get these wheel bearing assemblies. I think you got to put the brake dust shields on them, and then they just slide over, and there's 4 nuts that hold those on, and I think they're torqued up to about 130 foot-pounds. So yeah, get our workout in this morning. I think I showed everyone these already, but just in case, here they are. So they're ready to go. Like I said, just gotta get these dust shields on, and then get them mounted up. So exciting. It's coming together a little faster than I expected. Oh, and one other thing, I guess. So there's these like thrust washer things, so make sure those go in between your seal and the bearing. I'm gonna put a little more grease down in here. It came pre-greased, but it wouldn't be what I would say very generous, and I just don't want to burn up a bearing just because of a little lack of grease. So I'm gonna get on with that, and we'll check back in a minute. So we have some pretty good progress here. Let's give you a little update, but everything seemed to behave itself going back in. Yeah, so wheel bearing and hub assembly, it's on there. Nice resistance. Definitely makes me realize the ones that were on here, again, super tired. Little ABS sensor. Don't forget to put the little locating screw in here. Keeps it away from everything. These 4 studs, do them up in a cross pattern and go slow, because what it does is it actually seats the axle the last way in and kind of seals up the axle dust seal here. So do a cross pattern. I basically went from here to here, here to here, just by hand, and that seated it with the O-ring nicely, and that way if something's binding, you know before getting nuts with the torque. Once I did that, I torqued to 65 foot-pounds again in a cross pattern, and then again to 130 this way. I found the best method is actually turn the knuckle one way, do one up, turn it back the other way, do one up. You just get more room for the torque wrench. But yeah, pretty exciting stuff. It's nice to always see nice, clean, shiny, new stuff. You know, all the steering arms and bushings, the ball joints, no caked on clay, seals, and you can see all the U-joints in here. This is the kind of stuff that makes me happy. So I'm going to put the auto locking hubs in, and I also have to put the hardware that kind of locates the axle stubs in. And then I think that's probably about where I'm going to stop for today. But we're on the home stretch. The last thing will be getting the brakes back on, and we're done with this project. Oh, and I should say I still need to refill the diff. So I actually splurged and bought an electric fluid pump. I think that'll make my life a lot easier. That should come in today, and then I can just pump in the, I think it's about almost 4 quarts, just under, of gear lube, and we'll be good to go. So I'll check back once I get the auto lockers in, and I'll show you where we're at. So we have hubs. I hear the vacuum too, which is really cool. So there you have it. I don't know if we can pick this up, but it's on auto. And then we switched it to lock. Oops, let's try that again. Auto to locked. When we undo it, you can hear the vacuum coming out. So I think that's a good sign that whatever the heck was wrong with the front end before might be resolved. So I'm going to stop here for today, pack up. So yeah, the last step's going to be throwing some brakes on this bad boy. And yeah, we're basically done. So pretty excited to see the results, but thanks a lot for following along, and I'll check back when I'm doing the brakes. So I know I said that I'd check back in after getting the brakes back on, but I realized that this part 2 is getting pretty long, and after some further inspection on the truck, I also realized that some of the rear brakes weren't looking too good, and I saw a slight leak from the master cylinder actually inside the truck, and thought, hey, this would be actually a good time to stop. I think, you know, you've seen a pretty comprehensive rebuild of the front end. And, you know, this is another video on servicing all the brakes on the truck. So I also, while I think about it, noticed that some of the slides on the front calipers are seized. And so I think, you know, I'm going to do a whole video on that. We'll replace the front calipers, pads, rotors. I'm going to do new lines and a master cylinder, and I'm going to do the same on the back. So I think that will be beneficial for everyone, and also, you know, still give a good summary of the front end service that you guys have seen today. So with that, thanks a lot for watching. I really hope that you guys continue to enjoy the content. And I know I touched on this in one of our previous videos, but it's super awesome that, you know, we're beyond 1,000 subscribers now. We really never expected this, so thank you all for your support. If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button and like the video if you enjoy what you see. We try and post at least every week, and you know, the support from all of you is why we keep posting. So, you know, comment, we reply back to everything. And also, you know, we have Patreon, so if you'd like to support us another way, that would also be awesome. We're working as a New Year's resolution as we go into 2022 to put more unique content out on the Patreon platform, and items that you won't see on YouTube or our other social media platforms as well. And finally, look in the description below. Often I will put you know, tools and products that we use in these series in the links below. Those are also linked to our Amazon affiliates. So if there's something you see or want to know where I got it, a lot of the time that's going to be in the description. You can click the link and it'll take you right to what we bought. And you know, that also helps the channel too. So with that, thanks again, and we'll be back next week.